Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an episode of the Females Striving Over 30 podcast. Today, we have an episode where we're going to be talking about grief. But before we start, there is amazing news that happened today. Taylor Swift is engaged. Woohoo! Jasmine didn't even know.
I had no idea. You can tell by my face. I'm like,
I think we had to talk about like this amazing good news with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting engaged, and like that's the only thing that you see now on social media everywhere. So we had to mention it. But how has your week been, Jasmine?
well, as you can probably tell, considering I didn't know that information, I've had a really busy day today. I feel like normally I know a bit of what's going on, but I've really just not been on my phone to see today. As you all know, it's been summer holidays with my daughter, so that's been keeping me really busy, but I'm back at work next week. Like, it's gone really, really fast. Today I decided Mila was at my mum's house, so I thought I'll go into work and I'm just gonna like sort some stuff out just to ease me back in before I'm back at work properly next week. And I like cleaned all my desk. It was quite therapeutic. I like took everything off, cleaned all my desk down. I bought loads of new things to decorate my space,
Nice.
stocked up all my little drawers where I have like all my emergency stuff. So I have like anything that just on a day something happens, I'm going to need to get it in my office. I have all of that in there and snacks, of course, and drinks and all
Yes.
good stuff.
Yeah.
And I caught up with some work. So I actually really enjoyed it because it's my first like adult day of just being an adult and dealing with adults only in a week.
Oh, that's funny.
So
And I'm
how
pretty
was
sure
your
you
week?
missed that.
I'll miss her a lot. I'll miss Mila so much when summer's finished, but I also do miss like a bit of normal life and being an adult. So
Yeah. My week has been good. I started uploading a couple of things to Vinted for the first time and I got sales. So today I felt like, oh my God, I'm just like a businesswoman going to put my parcels into, the post and stuff, even though it only was like, I think like £10 total, everything. It was not like I was making millions, but I felt like, good, at least my things are selling. That's good. I think we'll make some money because, like we've been doing this whole cleanup of the rooms and everything like that. So I sent a lot of things into charity, and then there were a couple of other things that I wanted to sell. So yeah, let's see how it goes. When my very first time dealing with like scanning QR codes and printing labels at different places, because every person chose a different delivery method. So I had to go to one stop for one, and then to another place to another, and another place to another. So yeah, I don't know. It's been good. It was the bank holiday weekend, has been like quite relaxing. Actually, Facebook reminded me today that on Saturday was the 1 year anniversary of my first surgery. So I was like, oh, maybe that's why I felt a little bit of like I need to relax. I don't really want to think about stuff. And I think it, like what we're going to be talking about today about grief and everything like that ties very well with this. So yeah, should we introduce our guest? Yes. Okay. So we have today with us all the way from the US, Kera Sanchez. She is the founder of the Get Griefy Magazine. And we're just going to talk a lot about grief, the magazine, and all of that. So welcome to the podcast, Kera. How are you?
Ladies, thank you so much. I'm doing well. I'm just finishing my work day. And so it's kind of fun to just be analyzing our days and seeing where we're at. It's fun to be on different ends of the globe and knowing that we're connected. So it's really cool. So yeah.
Technology. And we hadn't, I was going to say like we didn't have any issues, but yes, we did because I disappeared for a little bit and we had connection issues. So I'm not going to lie.
Small potatoes.
So can you introduce yourself for our listeners? Because obviously they don't know you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my name is Kera Sanchez. I'm the editor-in-chief of Get Griefy Magazine. And my 9 to 5, my normal job, my real job, I'm a high school educator. I had been working in the classroom as a Spanish teacher, a high school Spanish teacher for about 13 years. And then most recently Last school year, I transitioned into a student services role, and I'm a dean of students now. But I'm also a mom. I have 2 little girls. They are 4 and 3, and my husband's in the military. So right now, I'm kind of juggling a lot and doing it solo, which is exhausting, but definitely empowering. It makes me feel like I can do a lot. But I think obviously the reason I'm here is to talk about grief. And that journey started in June of 2022 when my mom unexpectedly died. This happened while I was actually in the NICU. I was with my youngest daughter. She was just born. She was 5 days old, but was born a full month early. And I received the phone call from my father that my mom, while she was vacationing in Italy, she was in Naples, was not feeling well. And it got to the point where it escalated quite quickly and they wanted to call an ambulance for her. And by the time the ambulance got there, she had passed. And
Oh,
grief was one of those things that I think I was subconsciously fearful of and something I avoided for a very long time in my life. And it was something that I didn't feel comfortable talking about. And I didn't really want to face the fact of life that we're all going to die, that people that we care about are going to die. And it's not just about the death. It's like all of the things in life that are tragic and sad or can shape us and change us. And yeah, I was quite literally thrown into the deep end and I really didn't know what to do with it. So why not start a magazine? No, there was a lot of steps in between there, but that's essentially the long story short of my grief journey and where I got to where I'm at. But right now, the magazine is just about 2 years old. It'll be 2 years old in November, and we will be working on issue 7 right now. So it's
nice.
yeah, it's definitely when people hear, oh, like you have a grief magazine, that must be so morbid or that must be so sad. And truly it's the opposite. It's a magazine for people who are carrying a lot of sadness, but they really want to live. And that's the point, is to find a lifeline and find a way to still live a joyful and colorful life when you're carrying all of that grief as well. So,
I love what you said there because I think it's something that we avoid talking about a lot of the time. Even prior to, if you're not going through grief in that particular time, I think it's something we, like you quite rightly said, we don't like to think about the fact that we're going to die one day, that people
Mhm.
around us are going to die one day. Um, and for me, at the end of last year, my dad had emergency open heart surgery. So luckily he survived and he's doing really well. But I think for the past, year, nearly a year now since that happened, I've had to really face the reality that life is fleeting and that, it will end at some
Mhm.
point. And I think for me, it's something that have been able to have these conversations and be open about and address those feelings and making it normal to talk about that kind of thing can be really useful to help you work through that and to stop the fear a bit.
Mhm.
Quite rightly, a lot of us have. You
Mhm.
mentioned, obviously, when you found out about your mum, you were in the NICU with your daughter. How how was it navigating that? Because I feel like that's already such a vulnerable time and a
yes.
difficult time to get that information.
You know, it's kind of funny that technically both of my births with my eldest as well, they were just traumatic and just not the birth I had envisioned for myself and for starting my motherhood journey. And so I feel like a small part of myself was also grieving that entire situation as well. But obviously, the spotlight and the grief of my mom passing, that was like the boulder. And so that was what the grief that took over. But I feel as if now, as I take a step back and I look and all of the things that have happened, I'm like, oh man, like I think that I'm also grieving the fact that both times it wasn't how I planned it to be, and I had to have an emergency C-section. And along with my mom passing when my daughter was born, it was during COVID. I was COVID positive, and so they separated me from my daughter. So
Mm.
I didn't even get to hold her for 5 days. And so I think just learning to understand more about grief, you realize how much it's not just attached to the death, it's to all of these unmet expectations that we've had in our life, and just learning how to sit with the fact that we don't have a rewind button to go back and rewrite history. We have to just take it at face value as what it is. And so, yeah, I think just learning to normalize that, like, a lot of times things don't go as planned in life. And it's okay if that is hurtful to you or if that hurts your heart. Like, that definitely happens and it's super valid. So for me, just trying to juggle all of that, all of the Deadman is what I call it, like the things that I had to do after my mom passed, like writing her obituary and planning her funeral while holding a newborn in one hand. I feel like it was the hardest thing I had to do, but it was also something that kept me going, because if I didn't have that little baby that relied on me, I don't know what that would have looked like for me, like what type of darkness I would have been stuck in. So I feel like it was almost like a gift, a blessing, but at the same time, like the worst timing ever. So I don't know. I have mixed emotions about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally it didn't sound like it was like an easy time at all. One of the
No.
things that you said is very important, right? Because when we're talking about grief, everybody thinks about like losing someone that you love. But
Yeah.
there is like grieving as well, like as you said, like the plan that you had in your head of how your birth was gonna be and not the plan, or like we are allowed to grieve more things than just losing
Yes.
somebody. And obviously there is some kind of like taboo in a way to maybe have that. I don't even know how to say this in English. I can only think about the Spanish word, but anyway, like,
Well,
like
I
when,
can help you too.
yeah, I was gonna say like the el duelo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like,
Like the pain that you're feeling, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
like, so you're supposed to, like when someone passes,
Oh,
you just,
yes.
you
The
just
morning.
cry
The morning.
the
Yeah.
morning. Yes, that's the thing. Like you are
Yes.
supposed to
Yeah.
mourn them for a certain amount of time, and then if you keep being sad after how many months or how many years, this is like, oh, come on, get over it. But
Yeah.
obviously, grief is not the same for everybody. Some people might get over it faster than others. And I think it's very important to, you know, talk about like, yeah, not everybody is the same. And I wanted to see, like, obviously, you went through this situation and you decided to start a magazine.
Mhm.
So when you decide to have this idea, how, like, what is the idea that you have in mind to see, like, this is the sections that the magazine is going to have? Do you have any idea like that? Or it just, start like building as you went and years passed?
So originally, what had happened is after my mom passed, I found myself ruminating on so many conversations that we didn't get to have, and that really bothered me. It was almost
Mm,
like I didn't get that closure because it happened so suddenly. What I had done with all of that is I created a guided journal, and the purpose of the guided journal was for people to leave behind notes that are supportive, loving, caring for your family members in the
mhm,
chance that you happen to pass away. So it's almost like a life insurance policy, but like an emotional life insurance policy. And the idea is that, yeah, you fill it out, for example, your children, and that way you can give it to them. And they always have a piece of your heart written in a book. And I remember putting it out there on the internet and putting it out on Instagram and all of these things. And I found that a lot of people didn't really want to talk about it. And
yeah.
the people who did want to talk about it, we were like connecting like magnets. And we were like, oh my gosh, like we have so much in common. And like the conversations were flowing. And it was almost like there was these two extremes, like the people who wanted nothing to do with it, or the people that could relate to it so intensely that, they were just wanting to talk my ear off about it. And I realized that I was not unique or alone in my circumstance and the way that I processed my grief. Like I turned it into something. I didn't just let it sit there. I created something. And there's so many people who use creativity or just like action, like doing something with their grief.
Mhm.
And it doesn't always get told. It doesn't always get highlighted. Or sometimes it's just a conduit for something more. Like people pivot, change their life because of grief or the things that have happened to them. And so I felt like that idea needed to get explored more. And as a teacher, I know that so many students like really struggle to connect with material or things in the classroom. And that had been my job for so long, is to get kids to buy into what we're doing and make talking about nouns and adjectives and things like that fun, right? And so I was like, why don't I do this for grief? Like, why don't I make talking about the thing that no one wants to talk about, make it relatable, make it fun, make it colorful, make it so that people are drawn into it. So that way it's no longer an uncomfortable experience. Like, it's something that people can connect over, and it's something that people want to get involved in. And it inspires people who, especially in the very beginning stages, they think that they're always going to feel the way that they feel. And they feel like truly their life is over. Because, I lived that moment where I was like, man, like, how am I going to live the rest of my life without my mom? And so, yeah, I feel like one day it just kind of came to me like, I should do something with this. Like, this idea is not just something abstract. Like, we could turn this into something really cool. And so I was in the shower shampooing my hair, and it's like, boom, magazine. And I got out, like, I was still like in my towel, and I just started typing my first like letter from the editor. And like, the rest is history. Like, I feel like I'm the type of person where if an idea comes to me, like, I don't delay. I go take action immediately. And so that's kind of what I did. And ever since then, like, it's just been something, it's my passion project. It is something that I do on the side, but it's been very easy for me to do it because I just care about it so much. So, yeah.
I mean, the best ideas come in the shower.
They do. They really do. It's something about the shampoo. I don't know. You're like massaging your brain.
Yes.
I think it's switching off for me. Like, anywhere where I actually switch off mentally is when things happen. My brain actually has some time to do what it's supposed to do. It made me think when you mentioned your journal. I definitely want to like see more of that, and I'll definitely look at it after this as well, because as I mentioned, like the past year, it's had me thinking about lots of different things. And something that I've decided that I want to do is write some letters for my daughter. But I mean, your journal sounds great, so I can have a look at that. But I've mentioned it to a few people that I want to write her like letters for each birthday.
Yeah.
And I think people look at me a bit strange, like, almost like they're worried about me, because it's like they think that I think something's going to happen to me, which isn't the case. I think for me, I would like to do it because then I know if anything, things can happen at any point. If anything does happen, then I've done it. Whereas I think sometimes we don't think about those types of things unless maybe we're terminally ill or something like that, where we know that we've got the time. But to me, you don't always know, obviously, when things are going to happen. So I think it's not a bad thing to think that way, as long as it's being done in a healthy way. So I'll definitely be looking at that after this. I wanted to ask, so since you've been writing the magazine, would you say it's helped you process your grief more with you writing, but also with the contributions and things like information that you've pulled together for the magazine? And what are your top tips you found from doing it?
Well, like, for me, I feel like the best part of creating it is the community that has been built from it. Not only is it just a magazine, but we also offer like a small business collective of other people who have started a small business from their grief. And so many of these people, prior to experiencing the loss that they've experienced, were just normal people that, had a normal job, and something in them felt almost triggered and inspired from the way that they were feeling to start completely over again and start, a coaching business or write a book, or there's so many like products. Like, one really unique person that I can think of right now, like, she not only has like care packages, but she has something called the Giving Plate, and it's used to bring over treats or like cookies, baked goods to someone that's going through a tough time. But at the bottom, there's like a QR code, and it's like a log of all of the people that tray has gone to. And you can kind of leave a message for that person, and that person is able to write a message to the next person, like paying it forward. And I just feel like that is so cool and so unique and so different. And so what I love is that we're all able to work together to not only feel less alone in the way that we're feeling, but we're also like truly impacting and helping other people who are fresh to the scene when it comes to grief. Because, like, it sounds so ominous, but the reality is we're all going to face some type of feeling when it comes to this. Like, we're all going to feel this immense weight on our shoulders, and we're not going to know where to turn and what to do. And so it really just feels like we get to shine a light onto the path for the next person, and then they pass that on to the next one. And so just kind of watching it all play out for me has been probably the most insightful and fulfilling part of the journey. And then I've just been involved in so many things that I wouldn't have never normally been involved in if this hadn't happened to me. And so it's obviously a curse. It's terrible, right? My mom's not here. I would like give anything to have her back. But the reality is, like, we don't get to bargain like that. Like, this is the cards that I've been dealt with in my life. And so I'm playing with the cards that I have in my hand. And I'm really, I guess I'm proud of myself for doing that. And I know that my mom would be proud of me. And um, I think that part for me has been like the biggest eye opener, is just learning about yourself and what you're capable of in your grief. And it doesn't have to be shameful to feel that way in relation to grief. I think for me is like my biggest takeaway. There's no shame in taking like the shit sandwich you've been given and turning it into something else, you know? So there's no shame in that.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the idea about that tray that you can just like scan a QR code and leave a message. I think that's beautiful because I feel like I mean, you have experience, you have been like talking to a lot of people through your magazine and just creating all the content and stuff. But do you feel that females are more open to talk about what they grieve for rather
Yes.
than men?
What I have noticed is I would say 75% of the people that are involved with the magazine are female. There are a pocket of men who are very open and wanting to talk about it. I've noticed that a lot of men who have lost their children, they're much more open to talking about it versus anyone else. What's very ironic is that my husband, he lost his mom about a year before my mom passed. She was sick with cancer. And I just feel like the way that we both have processed our grief and the way that we deal with grief could not be more polar opposites. He's very matter of fact, like, this is a fact of life. This is how things go. This is, you know, it is what it is. And for me, it's more like, why did it have to happen to this way? And in order for me to move forward, I had to make some type of meaning out of it. Otherwise, it would have felt like it was all for nothing. And I'm not saying that that's how people need to do that. Like, everyone kind of has their own ebb and flow of how they move forward with grief. But for me, like, that was something that needed to be done. And I noticed that many other women also feel the same way. It's like almost like a hidden stage of grief that we don't necessarily always talk about, but it's there, like this yearning for something more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking to my mum recently, actually, and we were talking about grief and, you know, when people die and having children. So you said you had a 3 and 4-year-old, is that right? And I have a 4-year-old, so very similar. I've thought a lot about when something happens to somebody in our lives, how I would address that with her. Think it adds another layer to it as well. So is there anything that you've discussed in the magazine before, or anything that you can think of that is helpful for dealing with grief with children, or how to support children through grief?
I would say my biggest piece of advice is finding some type of children's book that kind of walks you through it. So that way it's not something that you have to create on your own. I feel like that's so much pressure on yourself to try to come up with a way to describe it to a child. But when it's woven into a story, I feel like it just makes it so much more comprehensible for like young minds. And yeah, there's that imagination at play, and I feel like it just makes it's almost like the magazine for adults. It makes it more digestible for them. And so I do think that children's books is probably one of the most underutilized tools when it comes to talking with kids about grief, because they can relate to the characters and they can see themselves in the characters. And kids are smart. They put two and two together. And if we put on shows for kids to learn about manners and hygiene and all of these other things, like, I do think that, you know, it can be taught that way as well. So I think that children's books is definitely very helpful.
Huh.
Yeah,
Would
definitely. I think it's such a hard thing to navigate.
I was gonna say, like, would you recommend to have these type of conversations before anything happens, or just wait until, someone passes away or something like that?
Unfortunately, when my mother-in-law was sick, my daughter was like 6 months old. So it's like she was way too young to process it. So I firsthand do not have that experience, but I really feel like it just depends on your child. Like you have to know, the types of things that they're ready to process and handle. I do think sometimes with anticipatory grief, that can be almost just as hard as the actual grief itself. Like visualizing and imagining what your life would be like without them is so hard. And so it's like a coin with two heads where you're like, oh my goodness, like either side, there's a plus and a minus, and you don't know how the child is going to process that or how the child is going to carry that weight of knowing that something bad could happen. But at the same time, it could also potentially ease their
Mhm.
stress because they know what's going to happen. So I really do think it kind of depends on the child and like how anxious they are, like all of those things kind of come in play. I would always, yeah, just it really truly depends on the kid and each individual child and what you feel comfortable with as their parent. I feel like parents sometimes like like you have a gut feeling in your heart of what the next move is. And sometimes you just have to trust that. So
And what about the same thing with partners? If you're more so like if your partner is going through grief, so say if you're married or with any significant other or somebody else in your family and they experience grief of somebody close to them, what's the best way or how do you approach supporting that person, especially considering everyone grieves differently?
yeah. I feel like when it comes to that, you really want to just make it be known that you are willing to sit with them in the discomfort and that they don't have to do that alone. We're so quick as a society to put a band-aid on it with like purchasing things or, bringing over food, which I do think bringing over food is actually probably one of the most helpful things you can do. But you want to bring over food and also provide them the option to say like, I will eat this with you, and we can sit down together, and we can, we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. We can sit and watch a movie, but just make them feel like they don't have to do it alone. I think is for me one of the best things. And preface it by saying, you don't have to do this alone, but if you want to be alone, I can do that too. So just giving them options, I think, is also something that's very important. Concrete options, not don't leave it open ended, but just giving them the options.
Yeah. I was just recently, actually, I even remember that we had this podcast recording today. Last week, I started thinking about like grieving, in terms of like miscarriages. So you
Yeah.
start seeing now more people talking about it, more things on social media, but it's still something that is so taboo to talk about. So
Hmm.
unless like especially when it's an early miscarriage, you kind of feel like you are going through it alone because you haven't told anybody. You
Hmm.
cannot suddenly tell everybody, and then you need to kind of like pretend that nothing has happened.
Yeah.
I love seeing how things are changing slowly, but I still feel like there is still like a big taboo about grieving an early miscarriage, and also like your partner feeling the same way as you when you miscarriage.
Yeah. I feel like one, we feel this need to put things on a value system where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, you lost a spouse, that's 50 points. You lost a parent, that's 30 points. And like, for whatever reason, we like put it on a totem pole of things that should or shouldn't be painful. And what I've come to realize is everyone has different feelings and ways of processing their grief, but we also need to understand that it's not just these like major life losses, like there's so much to grief. And although you may have never held that child yet, or, it maybe didn't even have a name yet, like it's still something that was a part of you. And it's something that you have to let go of. And you have to accept the fact that this fork in the road, you thought you were going right, really you're going left. Like it takes so much time for your body to kind of get reacclimated to what the new reality is. And so, you know, it really just depends on the type of person that you are, if that's something that you feel like sharing, but like there's no shame in not sharing it either. Like I just think that there's so many different ways to tackle the way that you're feeling, but um just just knowing that there's no right or wrong way to do it, and it's so normal to grieve something that you feel like society maybe wouldn't necessarily think is
Mm,
grief worthy, right? And
yeah.
so it just learning to understand that, I think, has been important.
Yeah. Yeah, because, after I had my miscarriage, I had this counseling session and I was talking to a therapist and she was just going through and asking questions. And the reason why I was saying like it was like this weekend, I was like, I felt a little bit like uneasy and weird. I didn't know why. And it's because it was a year since I had to have my tubes removed because of my
Yeah.
endometriosis. And then she told me like, because like I've lost the baby and I felt weird because as I said, like not many people knew about it. It was very isolating. And she was telling me like, but you are allowed to grieve. And I was like, I've never thought about like the word grief in this situation. And then she said, like, you had two losses so close together because you had to remove your tubes and then you had this other loss. So it's kind of like a massive grief that you're going through. I was like, I've
Mhm.
never would have thought. Yes, I am grieving losses and it should be okay to say I'm grieving, and not be something
Yeah.
that you just need to kind of like swallow inside and be
Yeah.
alone with it and just learn how to cope with it.
Hmm. Yeah. No, and I think too that our body holds so much in, and it does keep the score. Like that's like that
Mm.
saying is so true. And so your body is just reacting to things that have happened to you. And while you're not consciously recognizing it in the moment, like if you take the moment to think about it and truly assess the changes that you've gone through or the things that you've lost, like it really is something that it changes your life, right? And so
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that grief changes your life. It does. It changes the way that it changes your current reality. And
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a lot to process.
Something
Yeah.
that I feel like we've mentioned quite a few times now is like, as you were just saying there, you didn't know it was a grief initially, or maybe we don't think about death, we don't think about grief, and then something happens to us, and then we're hit with grief and we don't know how to deal with it. So
Mhm.
with the magazine, who is that magazine for? So if you are experiencing grief now, is that the best time to read it? Or would you recommend that actually it's good to engage and read things like engaging with your magazine before you get to that?
So this is something that I literally just wrote like a blog post on. I've connected with through this grief journey that I'm on. She posted something about it's always better to say something in grief than say nothing, because so many of us are afraid of saying the wrong thing. And
Mm.
my response to that is it brought me back to being in the classroom when I was trying to teach my students Spanish. And so many of them were afraid to participate or do the things that they needed to do to get better at Spanish because they were afraid of making a mistake or they were afraid of sounding silly. And my job as a teacher was to lower that filter in their brain to make it so that making those mistakes or sounding silly didn't matter. And the only thing that mattered was them putting effort into trying and doing the language. And so I guess my response to the question is that the magazine is the magazine, and it tells stories. And I think the meat and potatoes of it probably is more for the people who are experiencing grief or for people who are grief professionals that work with people who are grieving.
Mm.
But I would say the platform itself, what I post about, like all of the other aspects of the magazine, I feel like the general population should be engaging with some type of grief content, because although they might be afraid of it or it's something that they don't want to necessarily be around because it makes them uncomfortable, the more that they're exposed to it and the more that they understand the different ways that people will process things and the types of things that people are going through, when the time comes that they actually have to engage with it, they're not going to feel like, oh, I'm going to fumble this, right?
Mm.
Like they're going to feel comfortable around the thing that makes them uncomfortable. And in the end, it's just going to make our connections with the people that we care about that much better.
Yeah.
And so, we don't need to be grief experts. We just need to be grief informed, and we just need to understand what grieving looks like and feels like for other people. Yeah, as much as like we're a magazine, like we're a social community. Like there's so much to it. And so I think anyone could benefit from just simply following the magazine and seeing the types of content that we post and seeing the other types of accounts that we engage with, because when you lower that affective filter, that's where the real human connection comes in. And again, that's like where, for me, that's where the best piece of the magazine has been, is like that human aspect, that human component. Like I lost my mom, but I've gained so many friends. And so I think that that's the answer to that, I guess,
Yeah.
is that the magazine can be for everyone. It doesn't sound like it is, but it can be.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that you just said when you were talking about your students and just, they don't want to participate because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake. I think this is the same thing about people talking about what they're grieving. Many people is afraid to talk, but sometimes talking about it really helps. For me, for example, doing it here on the podcast as many times is helped me. Like now I don't cry when I talk about it. I used to cry as soon as I was just thinking about it. And it has really helped me to process everything that I had gone through. And I just feel like the magazine will do exactly the same thing. Either if you are submitting your story or reading other people's stories, as you said, make you feel like they're talking about it. It's okay if I talk about it as well. Or maybe they see themselves in someone else's story and feel like, oh, that's exactly how I'm feeling. And it will help them. Because I feel like, to me as well, like when I was talking about many of the things that happened to me this past year with my partner, I was trying to be cautious and just try not to be like super emotional or super anything like that. Because as I said, like sometimes it's seen like you need to get over things quicker, right? But I feel like talking about it on a regular basis has also helped him understand how I'm feeling. And then whenever I'm getting to a point like I'm just feeling a bit more vulnerable, he knows how to calm me down, let's say. So I think like the magazine is a great idea.
Yeah, I think, there's that saying too, like misery loves company. And I think like in English, that sounds so like jarring, and it almost feels like when other people are suffering, you're like, oh, yes, like I'm not the only one. But like, I really don't know if that's how it is or that's how it's meant. Like, I think that when you are feeling as crappy as you feel, knowing that other people have lived through what you lived through makes you feel less alone, and it makes you feel hopeful that if they can do it, I can do it. Right. And so it does build that resilience that you need to kind of move ahead and move forward. And so I don't know if that saying is necessarily like as negative as the way people make it, or like how people spin it. Right. I think it's okay to want to validate and see yourself in someone else who's also suffering, because it makes you feel like you do have company. Right.
Yeah. It's still gonna hurt the same way, but you're gonna be able to process it in a different way than if you had no one or you knew of no one.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think there's something about just feeling a little bit less alone in things, and just knowing that other people can relate and understand how you feel makes a big difference.
Totally.
It's made me think there's not many scenarios in life that we don't plan for.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something that people don't think about, and it's not a nice thing to think about, and you don't want to plan for the day that you're going to be grieving somebody that you love. There's not many other scenarios in life where we don't at least plan for what we would do in that scenario, or how we would deal with it. So I think there's something to be said about just trying to get comfortable with learning more about it now and how to deal with it. That's going to give you that little bit of extra help when it comes to it. And you do need to deal with grief. And unfortunately, I do think it is something people avoid. So I think talking about this and having the magazine that people can see will really support people with that.
1,000%. Yeah.
So with what happened with my dad, obviously I said he had emergency open heart surgery, but then he survived the surgery. It was effective, was recovering. I found it very hard to find resources and content for me for the past year when I've tried to look things up to support myself. But I think it's because I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, because it's a bit of an unusual. I feel like I can't really look at grief content because my dad survived. However, there is definitely something that came with the shock that it was an emergency. We knew nothing about the tumor until the day that he got rushed to have surgery and everything. So I definitely think it's had a lot of effect on me. However, I'm very grateful that my dad is still here. Have you explored any of those kind of themes or topics, or do you think it might be something you ever look at?
I feel like at this point, that is not something we've necessarily totally explored, but I have connected with people who perhaps their family member has like a terminal illness, or they are finding themselves as caregivers unexpectedly, which that's like a huge burden. And it's obviously a blessing that their person is still here, but having to carry your life plus like putting the weight on your shoulders that you're keeping that other person alive, right? That's a lot of pressure. And so those things have been explored. And I mean, that's so valid, because I feel like you're kind of in this liminal space where he's here, but you're hyper aware of the fact that he could not be, or you're hyper aware that, his mortality is like in question, right? And so I think that part is heavy, and we put our parents on a pedestal and we think that they're always going to be there and they're going to be like our superheroes forever. Once we kind of get a glimpse of them aging, or just things that change, even like cognitive delays and declines, people with Alzheimer's, all of that kind of stuff, that is also, a part of grief, because your life is changing and you don't get any say in it, right? And so just learning how to absorb and take in the curveballs that life throws your way, it's not easy, but just having examples that teach you how to do that or show you how to do that, can be helpful. So,
Yeah, because I mean, even though we know, of course, our parents are gonna go before us, it's like you don't really want that to happen. So obviously, it's just hard to, as you said, see them grow old and kind of like knowing, well, the time is getting closer and closer. It's just inevitable. Like, we're not vampires that we're just gonna be living forever. It is hard, and obviously, we need to be prepared to be able to deal with the emotions that we're going to feel whenever that happens.
1,000%.
It's just, I mean, I feel it with my cats. I just keep seeing them and I'm like, ooh, they're getting closer. I don't know I'm thinking like, what am I going to do when they're not here anymore? Because obviously they are not going to live forever. And I know they're going to go before I go.
I know. This is very strange, but I even feel that way with my daughters, in the sense that you kind of grieve the stages that they've moved past. Like when you put away their baby clothes, or, things like that, like it's happy. Like you should be glad that your kids are growing, they're thriving, but there's a piece of you that feels sad that they're never going to be that small again. Or, I mean, for me, grief is also permanently put in my brain, it's almost like an hourglass with sand. And I just see time and opportunities kind of slipping through my fingers. Yeah. Like that song, Slipping Through My Fingers, right? Like that, it's so real. Like all of these moments in our life that are fleeting, we can't holding on to it isn't going to make it stay, And so I think learning how to accept that has also been painful, but it's part of life, right? And so I think maybe that's kind of, Jasmine, where you're feeling too, is just this like time marches on and we don't get any control over that, and that part's really hard to like navigate and juggle.
Because obviously like you're grieving that time is passing and you're going to have less time with your parents, for example, or all of that. But then we also need to remember that we should not let that dominate it. So we do not waste any of the good times that we have with everybody.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm like really scared about everything. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, like anything can happen tomorrow and I'm gone. Right. But then I cannot let that fear stop me from doing things, because I'm just going to miss out on times with people that I love. And then I will regret
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that I've definitely learned, and like a constant battle that I have with myself. I think this is a part of getting older as well. So
Mm.
for me, I think we've talked about this before in relation to age, but I think once you get past your 30s, you realize where you are in your life. And then all of a sudden, when you're in your 20s, you just think, like, my life's going to be forever. Like, you just don't really think that much about getting older until you start to see the numbers going up. And then
Yeah.
you think, wow, like, I am actually going to get old one day. And then definitely since having Mila, like, a kid is just a constant reminder of time, because one minute they're a baby, the next minute they're like bossing you around and very independent. And so you think, like, wow, like, I didn't used to notice a couple of years pass, and now
Yeah.
it's a marker of those years all the time, because it's a constant
Totally.
reminder of time passing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, it's more reason to embrace and enjoy your life and make sure you are
Yes.
spending your life the way you want to and finding really good purpose, which is what you've done with the magazine as well. But this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like it's a very difficult conversation to tackle, and a
Yeah.
very difficult topic. I think even just by listening to this, people, just thinking about it and knowing that there's support out there, and knowing that, I've had thoughts about the fact that, like I said, after my dad, I've thought about this year the fact that I am going to die one day and people around me are going to die one day. And I'm sure there's a lot of other women that have those thoughts, but it's not something you bring up the next day with your friends or at work. You don't say, oh, last night I was thinking about that, I'm going to die. It's not something you really mention to anybody else, and you just kind of deal with it on your own.
Yeah.
So I think having this sort of conversation will hopefully make other people feel a little bit less alone if they're feeling that way as well.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kara, where can people find you? Where can they find the magazine?
Sure. So all of our handles are the same at Get Griefy Magazine, getgriefymagazine.com. If they want to shoot me an email, just Kera Sanchez at getgriefymagazine.com. So yeah, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we actually are on LinkedIn now too. So those are the three main platforms we're using. And yeah, we try to keep it light. I know people think like grief, but we just got new branding done. We are very vibrant, very colorful, and we rely heavily on dark humor.
I think I'm going to like it over there. And I'll definitely look at the journals as well. So if anybody's been thinking about that,
Oh, yeah.
that definitely sounds like an incredible thing to do.
Yes,
So yeah,
thank you.
everybody listening, make sure you go over and check it out. Even if you don't need it right now, follow it. Take in the posts that you're seeing, because one day if you do need it, you'll have been soaking that in, and
Yeah.
you'll know where to turn to straight away, and where to get that support as well.
Yeah.
So make sure you do go and do that if you're listening.
Exactly. Thank you.
So thank you so much, everybody. Make sure you vote for us for the British Podcast Award. There is still time to do that. All the links will be in the episode notes. And we will speak to you all next time on the podcast.
Bye.
Thank you.